Hey everyone, welcome to the FilmIn5D podcast, the first ever podcast via FilmIn5D. I'm your host, Aaron Hammock.
And I'm the other guy, Colton Cash.
The guy who traditionally has been on the other side of the camera, except when we're doing skits. How the tables have turned.
I know.
What brought you to this side of the table, if you will?
I just got a lot of requests, for me to show my face more.
A lot of fans.
So,
Is that why your Twitter page is blowing up?
Oh, yeah, completely.
What I got, 3,000 fans? You got like 30? Is that the ratio we got going
Yeah,
on?
like 30,000. So.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so this is the first ever podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about why we're doing the podcast, a little bit about ourselves. It's going to be the first ever one, so we want to do an intro. But first, I'm going to give you guys a brief rundown, like I'm going to do every episode, about what this episode is going to be about. So like I said, we're going to do our intros, and then in segment 2, we're going to do news and rumors. This week we'll be doing rumors from Sony Alpha Rumors about the new Sony full-frame E-mount lenses, which is particularly of importance to me since I own an E-mount camera, the A7S.
Oh.
So we're going to be talking about, there's a lot of new lenses that came out last week, so we're going to be talking about those. And then I'm going to do a tutorial on editing, just a quick little tutorial just to show you guys what the tutorials are going to be like. And if you're watching this on YouTube, that's going to be pretty helpful for you, hopefully. If you're listening to it, I'm going to try to make it interesting for podcast listeners only that are listening from iTunes. Thanks for downloading, which you downloaded this a little bit later since it's not ready yet, but there we go. And then you're going to talk about binaural audio, which is going to be interesting. That's going to be your segment, talking about futuristic things that can be related to film. So that's the challenge. And then we're going to do a movie review on The Frame, which we have right here. It's an independent film by John Winans. We've both seen it. We both have our interesting opinions about it. I liked it a little bit more than you did, or did I? We'll find out. But first, let's start off. Let me tell me a little bit about yourself. What's going on with Colton Cash? Why are you here with me shooting a podcast about filmmaking?
Well, because I like you so much, Aaron. I just want to help you.
I know. I get that a lot.
But, yeah, filmmaking is more of a hobby for me, but I like doing it in my free time. I do like making music too, but I mostly just like consuming media, like video games and film. I don't know much about the technical aspects of making it, but it is interesting to me. So that's kind of why I'm here, to kind of throw in my opinion and maybe dumb things down a little bit for some people that might not understand some of the terms.
And you bring a different aspect than I bring. I went to film school. I studied this stuff. So you're going to have a different take than I'm going to have because you don't know all this stuff. Some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be new to you. So you're going to be like that person in the audience reacting to it. But you're, very quick learner, very smart, so you're going to pick up on this stuff. And like you said, you did. I know, right? For those of you on listening on iTunes, he just showed some affection to me, which is very unusual. Not really. Anyways, you said that you did audio. You do a lot of music, and you've been doing that since we were in high school. And you basically did every single song, with the exception of the intro, which my uncle actually did. You did every song for any skit we ever did. And every week it was like, Colton, get me the damn music. And you just had to make something out of scratch. And some of them were fun. You did a Matrix one. You did a Inception one.
Yeah, those were fun.
And so that's kind of where what you were bringing to the table. It was really the music. And for me,
I was a light guy too. All right, I hauled that equipment.
Yes,
that's something.
You still do. I mean, we're making a movie here shortly. Anyways, you'll be holding the mic. So a little bit about myself. For those of you guys who have been watching my YouTube show, know a lot about my opinions, where I stand when it comes to independent filmmaking and different gear I use and all that stuff. Basically, I'm just an aspiring filmmaker. I work professionally as a cinematographer and editor, and occasionally I get hired to do photography. And I kind of have built up my own studio, basically from the day I graduated college. Getting my Canon 5D Mark II is my first professional camera ever. That kind of launched FilmIn5D. I mean, that was the start. That was the start of the show.
Yeah, what happened to your Mark II?
You know what happened to it. The brand that shall not be named. The brand that shall not be named. We will call it from now on. anyways, so that's kind of what I do. I do all this professionally. I have a full-time job. I do stuff on the weekends, and then I also do for clients and stuff using all my equipment, and I do this for fun. And so I'm always reading articles about this stuff, always interested in this stuff. Apparently, I am not recording my screen, which is important, so you guys can see what I'm looking at. There we go. I'm on IMDb right now. We're going to switch over to Sony Alpha Rumors. So a little bit what I want to talk about now that we've done our intros. Why are we doing a podcast?
Well, first of all, it's a little bit easier of a format. We don't have to make a bunch of stuff.
I'm pretty sure we just set up all my gear and equipment in the living room, and it was not easy.
Well,
Tell me this is easier just because we don't have a green screen now. Just because we have, Star Wars posters and Godfather poster behind us. Is that somehow easier?
Well, I mean, we can kind of do it more often and stay a little bit more topical.
Right. But we're shooting this on a Friday and releasing it on a Monday. So we're actually talking about literally last week's news. And you're going to tell me it's more topical?
Well, Nimoy's dead.
Okay.
Is that too soon? That's relevant, right? Yeah,
No,
yeah, I see.
no. Okay, so one of the things I was joking around with Colton basically about is we're doing this because we both love podcasts. We both have podcasts we listen to. I listen to sports podcasts, wrestling podcasts, filmmaking podcasts, like with movie reviews, and nothing quite like this, which is kind of I wanted to do my own and see what people picked up on it and how much they liked it. But we're looking for feedback. What topics we should be talking about, what day we should be releasing it on. We're going to be releasing this on a Monday, and like I said, this is literally last week's news, but we are giving ourselves a little bit more time for production value and editing and stuff like that. So we're going to try a few different days. We're going to try Wednesday and a Friday release date. So basically, we're just going to be looking for you guys to send us comments. Either if you're on YouTube, just comment below the video, or on Twitter at FilmIn5D to send us an app mention. Let us know what you think. So we're going to try a few different ways. We don't know. We don't know what the show is going to end up being. We have our rundown today that I already went over. We honestly don't know. So hopefully this catches on. It's an interesting thing. So how long have we been talking about doing this podcast?
Man, it's got to be years now. It's been a while ever since we kind of stopped frequently updating FilmIn5D and doing all that
so we
cool stuff.
did FilmIn5D for a year. Our goal was to get to 52 episodes, like a year straight. I came to you and I said, this was right after I was out of college, and I said, let's do this. And we just did it. We didn't even know, we didn't have any graphics made. We just shot the first 4 episodes over a period of a month, and then we started releasing. And there was like this deadline where I had to make this shitty background with these shitty graphics, and it was just crazy. And what I realized about this podcast is we started talking about this back in 2012. That was when near the end of 2012 was when we stopped doing kind of our skits and our episodes every week, since we both had jobs and we ran out of time, because this was a consuming job for me. It was 20 hours a week back then just to do that. So that on top of what I'm doing now, I mean, I'd be working 78 hours a week if I did that. It's not going to happen. So in terms of the podcast, we were talking about it, and then what I realized is, what did we do when we made FilmIn5D? We just talked about it, and then we started shooting the next day, and then we started releasing episodes. There was no, let's wait until I get this gear, and let me save up for this lens, and let me get this A7S camera with the Shogun, the 4K. Let's get all that, and then we'll go. And then it kept getting pushed back. I've had that, what I just described, since December, and we still here we are, March 6th or whatever, and we're just now shooting. Like, why is that?
You don't even need a camera for a podcast, dude.
Exactly. You had to get your mic. You had to get your matching mic to my mic, and it was just like one thing after another. And I guess my point is, you just got to go for it. You just got to do it, and that's what we're kind of late, but we're gonna do it, and eventually we will add on. We will make the set look cooler. We might come up with different topics and do more research and all this stuff, but we just got to do it. So that's what we're doing. I mean, you haven't seen Interstellar, which guys, send him all the hate mail. Twitter at Colton Cash or whatever it is.
Yeah,
you have no
yeah.
followers. Don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Send him all the hate mail. He has not seen Interstellar. But what I would say from Interstellar is Anne Hathaway's line, which is, maybe we've spent so much time figuring this all out with theory. That's what we were doing. That's what I see so many people sending me comments on Twitter about, oh, what camera do I need to make this? Like, just go shoot the movie. iPhones can film movies. We've done episodes, iPhones filming movies. You don't need all this stuff. Does it help you? Yes. Does it make your production value go higher? Yes. But you're not even going to get there if you don't just go for it. So that's what we're doing. That's what kind of we're preaching right now.
Yeah, we're going for it, so forgive us if this is like a turd right now.
Yes. Send us all the hate, feedback, whatever. We want to make this as good as possible. We want you guys to be listening to this on your car rides home. Hopefully it'll be informative, keep you in the know, be your one-stop shop for everything but thou, or the brand that shall not be named, which we will not be talking about as of right now.
It's so sad.
I know. Give us feedback on what we should change the show's name to be, because the legacy FilmIn5D is so strong with its 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. It just brings back memories of a time since past. Anyways, moving on to segment 2. I'm going to talk about some new gear this week, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to pull up right now Sony Alpha Rumors, which is my go-to source for all things Sony, since I'm using the Sony Alpha 7S.
So wait, is that like for like everything Sony, like PlayStation Sony, or
No. This is Sony Alpha Rumors, which, like I said, I use the Alpha brand of cameras, which are the new. You know that you have the A7000, but mainly the new kind of mirrorless A7, A7 II, A7R, A7S. Which...
Yeah, prior to getting that camera, did you do any research comparing it to other mirrorless cameras? Like, why did you choose that one?
Sony's kind of the go-to for mirrorless. I mean, you got Panasonic, kind of, but I didn't even really consider them. We actually use Panasonic GH4s and GH3s at my work, and so I'm familiar with them, and I was using them before I bought my A7S, but it's just, you get a certain... I like the full frame that I had from my old camera, which should not be named. But I love that full frame aesthetic, and to me, it's just more filmic than that Micro Four Thirds. And there's a lot of advantages. I don't want to talk too much about it right now, but some of the things with the Micro Four Thirds is the lenses are so much smaller, they're cheaper. You got 4K internal on the GH4 and all of that great stuff, but you're still getting this kind of video compressed. The dynamic ranges are somewhat similar, comparable, but it still feels like you're watching a video. And so that I like the A7S because it is filmic. It does have that shallow depth of field. That's why I went for it. And so today we're going to be talking about some of the new, because what's happened is since the camera was released, it was actually only released with about 5 announced lenses, with the promise of, they had this roadmap, which I'm looking at right here. This says that these were released in 2013, and then 2014 we'd have all these lenses. Well, here it is, March 2015, and we're just
released yet.
No, they're just releasing these lenses right here, right now. The 5 I'm about to talk about, and then they still haven't released to the public the cine zoom that I'm actually going to be getting, the 28 to 135. So they're definitely behind, and you're kind of jumping into this new technology. It's just like when the first people who bought SSDs. I mean, were you one of those first people who bought an SSD right away, and like it was only 60 gigabytes, and all you could put on it was your operating system? That was it. You weren't able to use it for anything else.
No, it was too rich for my blood back then. Although right now I do have a small SSD for my hard drive, but I mean for my operating system, but that's because it's cheaper now.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You're a guinea pig in most cases. I'm a guinea pig with this mirrorless technology, the A7S. So there wasn't a lot of lenses available. I mean, you got lenses from the brand that shall not be named. You got lenses that date back 50 years that people are still using. I mean, you look at the amount of lenses that they have, it's like it would be more than this table. And then, Sony A7S, if you want to use native lenses and use the technology to your advantage in terms of the internal connection to the lens, you were stuck previously with about 5 lenses, and a lot of which are mainly photography, focused. You got your cinema lenses, which are the big, bulky, you can control everything. It's like you get the power zoom and everything else. And then you got the photo lenses, which most people have been using as video lenses too, but they don't have the kind of features you'd expect in terms of the focusing, the manual aperture, like I said, the power zoom and stuff like that. So you're at a disadvantage, but you're getting the good image quality. And that's what, ever since the 5D Mark II, there I said it, ever since that camera in 2008, people have been using photography lenses for these cameras. But now what mirrorless has done is they've made everything not as cheap as the GH4 and the Panasonic lenses, but a little bit cheaper and a little bit smaller. So here I got my 35, and if I take off this lens cap, this is my 35 2.8.
He's holding the 35 now.
Thank you. You got this little lens. It's a tiny little thing, and then on a camera that's already relatively small compared to other full frames, probably the smallest or definitely the smallest, it's miniature. And this is all because of that mirrorless, not having the extra flappable mirror in front, and they're able to make the lens ends up closer to the sensor, so you don't have that extra space, and the lens is closer to the sensor, so they're able to use less glass and use less thick glass, and they're relatively cheaper. So that's kind of where this technology is going. So I'm going to talk about some of these lenses that just came out this week. Let me go over to imageresource.com. So the first one, the big one that came out this week that everybody's been waiting for, is a 35 millimeter f1.4. And the reason this is interesting is, here I have my 55, which is an f1.8. This probably up until now, everybody was using this lens for video. If you were using an FE lens, if you're using a Canon lens, I said the name, oops. You weren't. If you were using a Sony FE lens, you were using this lens for video. This was the sharpest lens. It's Zeiss quality glass, and it goes in f1.8.
So wait, you can use the other lenses with your camera then?
You can, but you don't get the connectivity that you get if you're using the native. In terms of controlling those, because these all use what's called fly-by-wire, or not fly-by-wire, but kind of focusing, where it's electronic focusing. So it's kind of to smooth out the focusing, and it guesses where you're going with it, which is good and bad. Mm-hmm. If you're shitty at focusing, it's good. If you want precise, what your hits are, then it's bad, because it's going to be variable. So this is the lens that everybody was using, the 55. Now with this lens, I see the first Sony Zeiss lens that they're going to start using this one on top of the 55. This lens is about just as big as my 24-70, which is a zoom. So this is a huge lens, and some of the key things that I'm seeing on paper is it obviously goes down to f1.4. It's sharp. It's Zeiss glass. It's going to pop. It's going to have that nice Zeiss look. It's got an aperture ring, which is something that I've never owned a lens that had an aperture ring. The Cine Zoom I'm going to be getting will have one, but it's basically just another ring that controls the aperture, kind of like old style photo lenses before they had all these electronic apertures and shutter speeds and everything. Mm-hmm. That's what the lenses had. They all had aperture rings, and it's nice to have both, the electronic and the manual.
So you can just manually determine how much light's going in or something?
You can manually change the aperture.
Oh.
If you wanted to do a special shot where maybe the background was in focus and all of a sudden it slowly went out of focus, you could do it. You could turn it like a zoom.
Well, why can't you do that without the manual aperture?
Well, you don't get the artistic feel and touch of it. And it's not smooth. Apertures have hard stops. So if you're doing it electronically, it's going to be a hard stop where the iris is going to close one stop at a time. So if you're doing that in camera, it's going to be and you're going to notice it. If you're doing it smoothly, it's what's called a smooth iris. Now, does this lens have it? That's a good question. I do not know. I know that my Cine Zoom that's coming out, the 28-1 does in fact have smooth, so you can smoothly close it and open it.
So what are you saying, without the smooth, even with the manual ring, it's going to...
Yeah.
Oh.
I would say this one definitely. They would only add it if it had it. But what? So what if I have this 35 that I paid $800 for? It's not cheap, but it is the cheapest Sony Zeiss lens available. What would make me want to either trade this in or suck it up and spend $1,600 on this new 35 millimeter that's 5 times bigger, goes down 2 stops more, 2 complete stops. This is 2.8, that one goes to 1.4, which on the A7S, let's be honest, do I really need to go down that low? I mean, you got the already low light performance. Do you need to go down to 1.4? I don't really use 1.4 for video that much. That's pretty hairline in terms of focus.
Mm-hmm.
So my conflict is, why should I get rid of this one and get that one?
Because it's new and cool.
And more expensive, twice the price. So some points is obviously this is cheaper and this is smaller and lighter, but I would call this a photography lens. So I will keep this lens because if I just want to go out and I know I'm not going to be taking any video, and maybe my RX 100, I don't really want to use it. It's not as good as my A7S, or I know I'm going to be out at night. Maybe I'm going out to something at night, so that's going to be useless at night. I will bring this lens with my A7S. It's just a prime. It's a go-to. It's a nice 35 millimeter on a full frame. It's beautiful, and it's really small and light. I mean, this thing on my camera is possibly small. So if I'm using it for video, though, I'd definitely go with this 35 1.4. You're getting the aperture ring. You're getting a little bit more sharpness out of it. And it does stop down to 1.4, which for some shots, occasionally you might want to use for that shallow depth of field.
So are you actually going to try and get it or no?
I will get back to that. Quickly moving along now to the next one. We have the Sony 90mm 2.8 macro. Now, this is the first macro lens for the Sony FE-mount. You know what macro is, right?
It's like you can take pictures of ants and stuff.
So the standard, let me see if it's written on here. So this says 0.35 meters. So this can focus up to 0.35 meters, which might be, about right here. Okay. So that's as close as it can focus. Which if you're filming something like a little Lego guy, or maybe a fine piece of jewelry, that's not going to be close enough. I mean, you're not getting very close with that. And so what they do with the macro lenses is it actually will focus below from 0.5 to 0.28 meters. So even less than this. So it goes all the way down to 0.28. And it has optical steady shots, so you get nice, smooth, non-blurry shots. Because if your hand shakes, you got that. But it's not Zeiss glass. It's the Sony G series, which they're still good. They're just not going to have that Zeiss sharpness and pop that you're going to get from some of these other ones.
Can you really tell the difference between Zeiss glass and normal glass?
Yes.
Is that big?
Yes. Let me see if I got any pictures to kind of illustrate my point here that Colton's asking about for you guys on YouTube.
I mean, say if I were just watching a video, would I be able to immediately tell the difference, or would I have to zoom in on a part of the video to really tell?
So the picture I'm looking at right now, I could tell that this, I didn't even look. I could tell, I know that all these pictures are somewhat related or are being used with these new lenses. I could tell that this one is the 35 millimeter prime and it's Zeiss. And the reason I can tell that is the reflections in the car and the wheel. It just feels like it's 3D.
What?
It feels like it's 3D. So that would be how I describe the Zeiss glass. It's notorious for having that kind of. It feels like this is separate from the rest of the image. It's out of focus.
Yeah.
You got things out of focus in here, but it feels like it's popping out a little bit more. I don't know if you can see that, but just by looking at it, and I swear I did not look at this image before. I can tell that was done on a Zeiss, and it was most likely the 35. And there you go.
No, that's pretty cool.
And so here's the macro lens. So these are the type water drops you can take a picture of.
But that ain't Zeiss glass.
So So back to, is this a photo or a video lens in terms of the 90 millimeter macro? I would say that it's definitely a photo lens. Just because it's hard to film macro without getting too much shake.
Well, but I mean, what if you need that fingerprint shot with the little Wayland logo?
Well, then you got to pick a different lens than this, because I'm not really seeing the use of this particular lens. I would go more with a 135 macro than I would with this, which they don't have those yet. Moving along, we got the 24 to 240. Now that's a crazy range. I have a 24 to 70. They had a 70 to 200, which I've used. Both are great for photography. This one's a 24 to 240. So it's those two lenses combined and then some in terms of how much range you're going to get. But it's not Zeiss. It's a 3.5 to 6.3. It's got the optical steady shot, which is better if it's going to go into 240. Mm-hmm. But I'm not a big fan of the inconsistent apertures. I like to be able to zoom in, and then it stays. If I want to shoot at f4, it's going to stay at f4 the entire time. It's not going to go get darker the more I zoom in. And a lens that I had, the Canon 24 to 105 that we used all those years with the Canon 5D, that was one of those lenses where it was f4 all the way through, but when you zoomed in to the end of it, it got a little darker. And that was really noticeable when we were shooting events with it or whatever else. So just a thought. I think that's a good kit lens if you're just starting out. If you only had to get one lens and you're using it mainly for photography, one of the A7, A7R, A7S, get the 24 to 240, I would say. And then
Zeiss, dude.
Huh? It's not Zeiss. Anyways, moving along here, we got the first semi-wide angle. I'll get back to that in a second. First wide angle lens for E-mount, the FE-28 2.0.
Is it Zeiss?
It is not Zeiss.
Not getting it. Can't touch it. Nope. So
the cool thing about this lens is that it actually had two adapters made specifically for it. You have an ultra wide and a fisheye converter. And
what, like it snaps onto the back of the lens or something?
No, it's like a converter that goes on the front. So it sells separately. You got converters. So 28s, relatively wide on a full frame, not, wow, things are distorted and crazy. But you get the ultra wide, which gives you that your back to the wall kind of look. You can see everything. And you got the fisheye, which is going to distort it and give you that unique look, like when you look up and down, like what you would see on a GoPro.
So like when you're skateboarding and stuff.
Yes. Let's look at some shots with this, so I can give you guys my opinion.
That's a wide?
Huh? This is just the 28. This is just 28. Yeah. You got that shallow depth of field. I mean, obviously you're shooting this on full frame, and then they got some shots with the ultra wide.
Looks like a square. It doesn't look wide.
It's not going to be distorting too much. The fisheye, which I'll show you right here, gives you, and this before wasn't possible unless you were using other lenses, like other Canon lenses or whatever. Ultra wide fisheye. What do you think about that one?
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so my thoughts on this lens is it's cool that they made the two adapters for it. That definitely makes it more useful. When I heard that they were coming out with the 28, I was like, why? I mean, they have two 35s. Why need a 28? Why not come out with like a 16 or a 20? It was a little bit confusing to me. You?
Not me.
Well,
it's our neighbors.
Yes. All right, and then so this is obviously unlocking kind of that wide angle realm of now you can shoot natively, which, like, I sold all my Canon lenses when I invested in this. And yes, I know I said the word. My bad.
You've said it multiple times now, man. You're dropping the ball.
I know. But my point is, I like what they're doing with the mirrorless. I like that the lenses are still full frame. You know, you still got kind of the full frame lens, 4K compatible, all that good stuff. You know, with the full frame and the A7S, but they're smaller. Like if like a Canon 55 1.8 full frame would not be this small, and it's because Canon doesn't make mirrorless cameras like Sony does. So the mirrorless technology is coming out, is unlocking these new lenses, what people are calling the future. And I see all these topics on or shows of people talking about mirrorless versus DSLR. Let's talk about that for a second. I know it's a little bit off topic, but what do we think about mirrorless versus DSLR? I mean, based on what I've gone over here.
Well, from what I'm getting here, there's a lot of like a size advantage, but I'm not really sure technically what taking the mirror out really does other than showing the camera.
For photography, people who are doing photography are going to be a little bit more standoffish to mirrorless because it's not going to have the same kind of quick performance that photography has. It'll get there, you know, it will. It's just like any new technology. Mm-hmm. At first, it might have a little bit of a deficiency in one area. It'll catch up. But the advantage is, you know, having the smaller lens, the entire camera being smaller and using less power, doesn't have a mirror, you know, all that stuff are just pluses you just can't ignore. And don't forget, for video, us video guys, we don't use the mirrors in a DSLR anyways. And then the other, probably my favorite feature is that without the mirror and you're shooting video, you get the EVF like you get on a Sony or Panasonic GH4 or Sony A7S. You're actually, when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're seeing what the final image will look like rather than seeing the reflection of what the lens is seeing.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
So whether you're doing photography or, and I know personally a lot of photographers who love the mirrorless. Now they're going to be, it's just like anything. You've been doing something for 30 years one way and new technology comes along, it's going to threaten you a little bit. You're going to be like, no, I already have all these, you know, like tens of thousands of dollars worth of lenses. Like I'm not gonna, you know, change. Like this still works better for what I do, and sometimes that's the case. Sometimes there's photographers out there that are so used to using the optical viewfinders that they know based on their settings like what exposure they're getting before they take the shot, and they take the shot just to check it, and then they keep going. Now, if they did move over to mirrorless, I think they'd see the advantage of having, you know, kind of the actual representation of the final image before they even take the shot. So they don't have to waste that time viewing it and making sure or missing a shot. I've done weddings. I know what it's like to miss a shot because you thought you had your exposure right. You took it. All of a sudden it's blown out too much. You go back. The cake's already been cut. You know, it's just one of those things where I'm a big fan, but you know, I was only invested in Canon for 3 years, so it didn't take too much for me to switch over. But like I said, if you've been doing this for 30 years, you're going to be a little bit more apprehensive about it.
You know, you just keep saying that C word, man.
The C word. We can't call it the C word. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Premiere. We're going to go to segment 3. I'm going to do a tutorial on editing. This is going to be a short one just to kind of show you guys what I have planned in the future in terms of just little tidbits of tutorials and information. This whole podcast is kind of not a tutorial, but there's a lot of information being thrown out there. A lot of opinions too. Some stupid and some not.
Excuse me.
Anyways, so we're going to go, today we're going to be talking about scale versus set. Now this is relevant for anybody using Premiere Pro on CC, Creative Cloud, which is the monthly service. And so you're getting the monthly updates or, you know, whenever they're coming out with new. So this is something I noticed probably about 3 months ago. And before, I wasn't told to me. I didn't see any release notes on it. I just kind of saw it one day and I was like, oh, this is interesting. That's really helpful. So I work a lot with 4K footage, both at work and with my Sony A7S. So one of the things is I actually edit in 1080. So I'm releasing any videos in 1080 and that's giving me the more detailed image squished down into, you know, 4 times less size, but then also the option to punch in.
I got a quick question about that. Does it kind of degrade the image at all when you kind of squish the image like that? Like, do you lose like a...
So you're obviously losing pixels.
Yeah.
Because you're going from 8 million pixels to 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
But the extra detail you were able to get by filming at 8 million pixels is going to be there when you squish it down. The extra little curvature or line in the graphs or whatever. It's going to be there when you squish it down. Something that filming at 2 million pixels wouldn't have picked up, but filming at 8 and then squishing it down picks up.
But what about the lost pixels? Where did those go?
So a lot of people, you see a lot of people, talking about this. And so specifically, we'll go here to Premiere real quick, and I got this little test shot that I did using my Shogun. It's one of the very first shots I ever took with it, which is awesome. And so
you should describe it for people listening.
No. They need to watch it on YouTube. Plain and simple, right?
But it's a podcast.
It's a video podcast that you can listen to. Okay. So basically, we're looking at some 4K footage from the Shogun. I've just dragged it into a timeline, and I'm going to show you what the difference between scale and set are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch the settings of this sequence, because I've just dragged it into its own. So right now it's at 4K. I'm going to go ahead and do this down to 1080p. And now when I do that, and I hover over the shot again, it's going to zoom in. Now what that's doing is it's cropping into 1080 out of a 4K image.
So it's not squishing the picture, it's just...
It's which it still looks nice, because 4K is such high fidelity and high quality that even when you zoom in, even when you punch in digitally up to 100%, up to 200%, anything past that you're going to start losing pixels. You're still getting a really nice sharp image. Especially, I was using my 55 millimeter for this shot. So what you got to be careful about is, before, what people would do is they would go right here and they would scale to frame size. And that's great. Whether you want to scale up, like obviously if you have a 720p image and you're putting in a 1080p project, you have to scale up, or else this is going to be a little tiny box in a bigger frame, right? So people scale up all the time. That's fine. You can scale down too, which is okay. But here's why I'm going to show you why you don't want to do that. One, you do lose a little bit of fidelity. You're scaling the pixels down, so you're going to lose a little bit of the fidelity and the detail that I was just talking about preserving by just manually kind of bringing it down and squishing. So instead of squishing the pixels, it's scaling the pixels. It's making all the pixels a little bit smaller instead of squishing them closer together, if that makes kind of sense. Yeah. So that's okay if that's all you're going to do. If you like that shot and you like the framing of that shot, that's great. But what you want to avoid is if you use the scale tool like I just did, and then you go in here and you say, you know what, I kind of want to have a little panning shot here. So I'm going to zoom this in, and then I'm going to set a keyframe, and then I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to do a little panning shot.
So you do a pan off of a still 4K image.
Yeah, so
that's crazy.
So it's not going to play back too well on my computer, but you can see that the image is moving a little bit. Here, let me zoom in. So it's moving a little bit, got a little movement to the shot. That's cool. The only issue is I've lost a little bit of fidelity in that shot by doing that. Because if I look at my settings right here, I'm actually scaled in 35% over. I've made the pixels 35% larger without adding any new pixels. Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's pretty obvious. If you do that, if you're ever going over 100, you're scaling up, you're going to lose a little bit of resolution. It's not going to hold up compared to other shots that are natively shot at 100%. So instead of doing all that, what you want to do, and I'll pull in another version, is you want to do set to, this is the new feature they've added. It's called set to frame size. So we're going to set to frame size. It's going to look the same as the other one did originally. 100. So it's going to look the same at first. You're going to have a little bit, if you're really pixel peaking, you will have a little bit more fidelity and detail, like I said before, because you're squishing the pixels rather than scaling them. So you're going to have a little bit more detail, especially when it comes to these other shots like this with grass and leaves and all that stuff. But now what you've done is you've given yourself a little flexibility. Now if I hit this drop-down menu, you'll see that it's at 50.
What?
So it rather than scaling it all down to back to 100,
Uh-huh.
and then you have nowhere to move from there, it just basically dropped it in half. So now when I zoom in and when I do pans, it's going to keep all that detail as long as I don't go over 100. So the key thing here is, and this is probably obvious to some people, but I know I used to use scale 2 all the time. And then what I ended up started doing based on some information that I got from Dave Dugdale actually, is that when I was pulling in my 4K image, I would go in here and I would set manually to 50. That's the exact same thing as hitting set 2. But you're taking away that if you're unsure about what the final product size is, like maybe you're doing actually a 720p final thing, which would actually be 33.3% instead of 50. So if you're not sure, just hit set 2. So if I get rid of that thing and I go back here to set 2, and that way you're just sure. You're not going to lose any, as long as you don't go over 100, you're not going to lose any fidelity or detail or anything like that. So that's just a quick little trick. I probably spent way too much time talking about it, but any questions?
No, I thought that was pretty cool. I think the idea of panning on an actual still shot is pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, that's one of the nice things about 4K. A lot of people, I think when I do my first short film with this setup, this camera, it will be shot in 4K and released in 4K. But everything else I do, this podcasts, client interviews, things for work, anything really, I'm going to be releasing on YouTube in 1080. And so I'm going to have that extra flexibility of basically having 2 cameras, one that's wide and then one that zooms in. And it's all just digital. And you can do pans and everything else like I just showed you. You just got to be careful about scale 2 and set 2. Set 2 is the new option. If you knew how to manually do it before, this isn't going to be news to you. If you do set it to 50, it's the same thing. Just don't scale down, because it's basically like in Photoshop.
Yeah.
If you take an image, if you bring an image into Photoshop, and then you shrink it down because it's way too big, and you say okay, and you set to the scale size, and then you kind of make the rest of the composition, whatever titles and everything. You're like, it needs to be a little bit bigger, and then you make it bigger again. What's going to happen?
It's going to be all super crappy.
Right. The pixels that you scaled down, and then now you're trying to like stretch them back up. They've already been scaled down. You can't undo that. Now for Photoshop, they have what's called a smart object. And what a smart object does is if before you scale it down, you turn it into a smart object, which means it's uneditable. You can only just change the size. When you scale it down, it'll remember what the original size was. So as long as you don't go over that original size, it'll keep all the fidelity and detail that you had with the original image. So that's just a little tip for anybody using Photoshop. Always, if you're gonna scale down an image, always turn it into a smart object first. It'll remember, it'll cache kind of like what the original size was, and then that way you don't also need to restretch it out, and then you got to start all over again, basically.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty frustrating in MS Paint when that happens to me.
MS Paint, you're still using MS Paint.
Yeah, I don't think we have smart objects there.
Oh yeah, okay. Just copy and paste in Paintbrush. All right, so we're at about 40 minutes right now. You want to talk about your little topic? Oh, sorry. We have to skip Colton Cash's topic today.
What?
It's just we ran out of time. We had so much interesting stuff to talk about. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to talk today to you and everyone listening and watching.
Which is right now started at 10, down to 3. Go ahead.
I thought it was in the millions right now. Anyways, it's binaural audio.
Right. Let me pull that up.
And just a little short description of it. Basically, it's a method of recording audio in such a way that when you listen back to what's been recorded, it sounds like you're in the room.
It's like surround sound.
It's different than surround sound.
And is this paired with any kind of virtual reality or anything like that? Or is this you're just sitting in a living room, and then if I turn my head one way, it's going to know that I turned my head?
No, it's not. It's not that advanced yet.
Well, then what are we talking about? I thought we were talking about futuristic technology.
Well, okay. This technology exactly isn't futuristic. It's actually been around for a long time. I think yeah, I don't know exactly how long, but it's been around. It's just nobody's really used it that much.
Hasn't been embraced by the masses. Is
Yeah.
this like a movie theater kind of thing, or is this like personal, like playing video games, watching a movie? Like, what is this?
Well, that's part of some of the cons of this. It's more of you really need a pair of headphones to take advantage of this. So it's kind of niche in that regards. Like you would have to really be just watching the media, like maybe on your computer or at home. So it's not something that you could say just play in a movie theater and experience.
So is this kind of like the Wii, where you have your little console and you have your little laser whatever thing, and then you have your headphones on, and it knows when you turn your head, so it knows to adjust the audio as if you turned your head.
No. So you have two microphones, right? And you set them at about the distance of the human ear. And then you set up like a fake head that'll absorb the sound just like, a human head would. And with some fake ears that'll kind of, mimic your human ears. And what it creates is, instead of just having the sound come at you and then, surround sound, playing the sound from behind you, blah, 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 and you can do that. It literally, it's like you're in the room. Like, it's kind of hard to explain to you without you actually experiencing it. But
have you experienced it?
Oh, yeah. I actually have a pretty good example of it for anyone curious who hasn't heard anything like this. If you look up a virtual barber shop, you can find it pretty easily on YouTube. That's the first video I really saw that I thought used binaural audio really well. If you sit there and listen to that video with headphones on and close your eyes, it feels like somebody's cutting your hair.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's crazy.
Like, is this being paired with, like I said, the virtual technology? Like,
yes.
So, okay. So obviously Sony's coming out with their new kind of VR headset. You got the Oculus. It's been in development for years. Is this going to be something that's paired with it? Like, how soon do you think? You think that's the first kind of thing that it's going to be paired with?
Well, I mean, obviously part of the, virtual reality and goggles and stuff like that, which is something I want to talk about some other time. But, obviously when you're doing that, it's going to have directional sound and stuff like this. But this binaural audio is really about recording it in such a way that it accounts for the human head. So, yeah, I see you pulled up the video there. So,
it says 7 years this video's been up.
Yeah.
We're talking 7-year-old technology. I'm bringing all this new technology, new lenses coming out, and you're talking about stuff 7 years old. Why are you talking about stuff 7 years old?
Trust me, if you listen to this video, like I want you to listen to it later, it'll give you goosebumps. Like it'll feel like a guy sitting there cutting your hair.
Wow.
And yes, it is that mind blowing. And the reason why I'm so interested,
I'm just seeing a blue screen right now. I don't know about you.
Because there's no video,
Okay.
Which is another point. So the reason why I'm so interested in this is because when I sat there and listened to that, I was like, wow. Like, what if this, why don't people make this, like more videos with this binaural audio? I thought it would be hot. I was like, I thought it was the future right then when I saw it. I was like, my gosh, like, this is crazy. Like, I can't wait till
And you look at the
it.
date of the video and you're like, damn.
Yeah. So I was, for all this time, I was thinking, this is so weird. Like, why aren't there videos with this binaural audio? Like, it's so cool. I mean, I've seen some, but they're not really as fantastic as I'd like. And I started thinking about it. And, when you watch a movie, like, how much of the audio there that you're listening to is actually the audio they recorded, like, on site? Like, none of it. Like, they use all Foley and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah, I mean, the voices and some stuff is usually on location. But, yeah, there's just a lot of made-up stuff.
Yeah, and so the problem is if you're using something as accurate as like binaural audio and you're really trying to replicate, the actual space that the listener would be listening from.
They have to carry a dummy around with them and just record the audio in every situation.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you're going to try and add audio in post in order for it to not, be jarring in experience, you'd have to have it in the exact same position where the audio would be coming from, which obviously that becomes entirely cumbersome. So for a movie where the binaural audio is not even going to be, benefiting people sitting there in a theater, it's only going to benefit people, I don't know, who actually like watch the DVD at home with headphones. Like that's just a ridiculous amount of work to put in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm getting the sense that it's not very practical, and that's why it kind of hasn't taken off. Do you see them kind of digitizing the process?
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to backtrack a little bit. I mean, I think what I would like to see people use it for is one, like YouTube videos or something like that. Like, just like a random video, not really necessarily a movie, something, YouTube videos, people just watch it on the
Kind of
computer.
like when you went to Disneyland and then you got to do the flying over California thing and the soaring over California, where they had like, it was only one little tiny 5-minute thing, but it felt like you were flying, and kind of like an experience thing, more like kind of like what 3D was back in the day before it became mainstream.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think you could create some interesting videos using binaural audio, and I think the nature of it, like, if you listen to the barber thing, like, it's really apparent when he's cutting the things in your head. Like, it would really lend itself to certain scenarios, like, I don't know, maybe if, like, you're from the viewpoint of somebody tied up or something like that.
Like, what about, like, a horror game? You know how much I love those.
Oh, yeah, something like that would be nice, too.
I can't imagine virtual reality with headphones that made it feel like I was also there. It'd be like an out-of-body experience. I just can't even imagine. I wish they could use it for film, though, but you're right. There's just so much that goes into audio mixing that it's kind of unfeasible at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way they'd really only be able to do it is if they shoot the movie like normal, and then they have some specific scenes that are designed for the binaural audio. So so they only have to worry about it for this one specific set, maybe set in this room, blah, blah, blah. And then, based on what's going on in the scene, they can take advantage of that to kind of immerse you while you're listening to that.
Intermission, everybody. Put on your headphones and listen and enjoy the experience of getting eaten alive.
Yeah. I mean, okay, obviously, it wouldn't really work if you're watching on a TV or like in the theater. But, if you're enjoying it, on a DVD, whatever, listening to it on a computer, then that's like a little bonus experience that, would be cool. But obviously, like I was saying before, it's such a niche. It's like I can understand why they wouldn't even put all that effort into that just so a few people can watch it on a little computer screen. Most people don't want to do that.
Right. Well, cool. Hopefully it gets done. I mean, like I said, hopefully they can kind of make the process easier. That sounds like something that would definitely enhance a movie-going experience. Let's move on to segment 5, which today we're going to do a movie review. Normally we do some kind of film game or something, just funny, just to test your knowledge. But today we're going to do a movie review.
Uh-huh.
And what are we reviewing today?
I believe it's called The Frame.
Oh,
yeah, if you could see Aaron, he's pointing to it.
Completely blown out. Like that was actually on purpose so that they couldn't see what it was. There we go. It's The Frame. It's a independent film by John Winans, starring David Carranza. It's a very interesting movie. We've both seen it. I'm a huge fan of it. I own the movie. Let me know a little bit about what you. It was this movie. Just to go over some of the details, it was shot on the Sony FE-mount, which is kind of in the range of a Red Epic when you get all the lenses and everything else on it. So it's kind of a higher end digital camera. It's Sony's version of the Red Epic. So it's a good camera. I mean, this wasn't shot on film. This is a digital movie, like most movies should be made on nowadays, in my opinion.
Whoa. Be careful there.
Like I said, starring David Carranza and Tiffany Mulwallam. It's the second movie that I really enjoyed from John Winans. The other movie being Ink, which is right here, which we've both seen. We're not going to spoil this movie. Both of these, if you haven't seen either of these movies, we strongly recommend them. We don't want to spoil it, but we're going to talk about some more of the filmic aspects and a little bit about independent films and what makes them stand out, what makes them better or different or unique. So let's talk about that a little bit. So for me, this film is all about the layers, kind of like Inception. You got your different levels of dream space. This is the same thing, but in the realm of making a movie. You got the writer of the movie, and then you got the characters in the movie, the characters within that writer's script, and then you got TV shows within that movie, and it's layer and layer upon layer of it can go on indefinitely. And it's a very meta kind of plot.
Uh-huh.
And it, honestly, for me, I really enjoyed it because I was a film student once upon a time, and I saw everything that they were doing, all the kind of things they were making fun of, and I don't want to give anything away, but it was very rewarding. Having gone to film school, kind of like seeing The Artist. You remember the movie The Artist, the black and white film?
No, that
so that was a good movie, but you would get so much more out of it if you knew all the kind of nuances of, oh, it's a movie about silent film, but the transition into sound film, and then the actors that were left behind, and you get all that, and then all of a sudden it's just like a life-changing movie. So The Frame for me is a life-changing movie. What do you think, as someone who did not go to film school and may not have picked up on some of the more meta aspects?
Definitely for me, I don't feel like it was exactly life-changing. I did pick up on, a good amount of the things, but I did have to have you explain some of the things to me, some of the things I missed. I definitely think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I had gone to film school. So I think for me, it was an interesting experience, but I felt like some of the things I didn't really quite get made me feel like it was a little bit too artsy, if I can say that, and it kind of distanced me.
A lot of independent films are artsy because they're allowed to be. Because that's the thing: is it bad that it's artsy, or is it just that you're not used to it? It's different, and therefore you're kind of challenged, or you feel kind of awkward. Like it's like, I get this, but I don't get this. I guess take me. I get it. Or I don't get it. It's whatever. That's just an aspect kind of a lot of independent filmmakers take that just you won't see in a Hollywood movie because people just won't get it. And people will leave the movie theater wanting their money back.
Yeah, I do think that is something I can appreciate about independent films, is that, since they're not under the pressure to make all this money and all that kind of stuff, and appeal to the greater masses, it's not, it's more like they're making it for the arts as opposed to making it to make the bucks.
So, first technical complication, my computer died. I didn't plug it in and it just... Oh, no, there it goes. Okay, never mind. Oh, no, it's dead. Anyways, what can you do? It's Apple. So our computer has died on set. First technical complication. The battery on the trail gun's running out. All fun stuff. But, so yeah, let's just talk quickly about just independent films. When you watch this film, at what point do you say to yourself, having not known that this was an independent film, at what point do you say, either good or bad, this is an independent film?
Well, first, looking at the actors, you kind of get the feel that
you've never seen them before.
Yeah, exactly. So when you see a movie with a bunch of actors that you haven't seen before, you kind of think independent film.
But is it the acting bad?
No, I thought the main actor,
David Carranza.
Yeah, I thought he was great.
It's one of those things where he kind of he has a certain arc. It builds at first you're like, he's doing okay, and then you're like, by the end you're like, damn, that was stellar, much better than Ink, John's previous movie, where just the acting was decent. This movie actually was carried in much part by the acting. Mm-hmm. So that would be my first kind of thing is, yeah, you don't really notice the actors, and usually in independent films, actors aren't as good. There's a reason that you don't really know them. It's not that they just haven't been discovered, even though I think David Carranza, you'll be seeing him in a few more Hollywood films now, so he did get discovered, I think, in my opinion. But, you see a movie with Brad Pitt or, Tom Hanks or whoever else, Jessica Chastain, Emily Blunt, ones I love, they're going to be good. They're the top. They're the A-list. They're the top. They're gonna be the most emotional. They're gonna be the most realistic. They're gonna be the best everything, and that's why they're getting paid the big bucks. And then you got the people in the independent films that it's a hobby for them, or they're passionate about it, but they're just not on that same level. So then going on, what else about an independent film do you see that you're like, either good or bad? This is an independent film.
When you know certain things about the production value.
Production value is huge. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're making an independent film. You don't got 10, 20, $300 million to make a movie. You got, in this case, with The Frame, 400,000. And you're using one camera.
And they used one camera?
Yeah, the F-55. And you got one audio guy.
One audio guy.
And one of everything. You got one cinematographer, and you got, the director, and then you got the actors that you have that some of them are working for free. And And then you got the stunts. You got the car chase scenes where they can't break the law. They can't afford to block off blocks of streets for hours on end. They gotta, maybe they can block it off for an hour, and they gotta quickly, everything's got to be on the first take, and they got to get it all at once. Like the shot, I don't want to ruin anything, but the shot near the end where he's the only one.
Yeah.
How did they do that? Guess what? They didn't just block it off. All right, they did some tricks to make it feel that way. Like with the car chase scenes, maybe the film sped up a little bit to make the cars look faster. Do you think Fast and the Furious 7 is going to be doing that? Any of those tricks? Hell no. They're going, they're going all the way out and getting all those shots to make it look as realistic as possible, and they are sparing no expense at doing that. I mean, probably the production value of that movie is going to be all in the car chase scenes. Right, you have those in that scene, like every car chase scene is going to be high top. You're going to see cars getting blown up. You're going to see cars going really fast, and like all this stuff is what the budget kind of unlocks for you. So in an independent film, you kind of get taken out of it a little bit sometimes if you see something that might not be really realistic. And I hate when people say, "Oh, why that's not real?" It's a freaking movie. It's a movie. It doesn't have to be real, but also it can't be so unreal or so like fake to the point where you realize that it's a movie while you're watching it. So while watching the frame, did you get any of this feeling, or did you think that the production value? Do you think they pulled off a lot of the tricks, with various special effects that you saw and stuff like that?
I mean, there were certain key aspects of the film that I definitely noticed, and I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit. It's like, I can see.
Guess like the helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, there's this pretty cool scene where he's getting chased, and there's a spotlight from a helicopter,
which is a really good shot, by the way. It's of him running, and the camera's just tracking him as he runs full speed away from cops. And there's a spotlight, and you hear the helicopter. And now I see a lot of people online saying, "Well, sometimes it's better if you don't see it." Which is it's true in some cases. Like, you don't see the guy getting knifed in the gore, you just hear it. And that is more visual than the stuff you make up in your mind is more visual than it could possibly ever be if they actually showed you the gore of it. Right?
Yeah.
But then there's some cases where I think that would have been better if you saw a quick shot of a helicopter in the air, filming the guy. Or, I mean... chasing the guy with the spotlight. So that's one of those things, like, you have a chuckle, but then I like that shot, so it's like, I kind of let it go at that point. Like, yeah, they didn't have the money to get a helicopter, so what? I'd rather them invest the money in other areas than spending $1 million to rent a helicopter for a day.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's crazy. I read some stuff. Each truck that they rented cost $6,000 per day.
$6,000.
So they had those big semi trucks doing the chase scenes. They weren't running those things into anything. Everything that truck hit, that was all CGI. That was all superimposed with another car. There's no way they're scratching anything on those trucks. The cars come into a screeching stop. There's no way they were skidding out those tires. They were just adding smoke afterwards. So some of that does kind of take you out of it, but at the same time, you're watching an independent film, and that's what comes with the territory. You're going to get a unique story that you would not see in Hollywood, a more artistic story that you would not see in Hollywood, and you're going to have to sacrifice some of that production value. So those are kind of our thoughts on that film, but you would recommend it, definitely?
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't say it's a have to see film, but I think it's definitely worth the watch if you're curious.
But our viewers are all film school students.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in that case, I definitely recommend it because it is pretty cool, the things they do in it.
Is it the best independent film you've ever seen?
It's hard for me.
Can you think of another one? Do you remember the first time you saw The Matrix? That's like, when I first saw this movie, it's like, I watched this movie back to back, like right away, because I just had to see it again to kind of get a grasp of everything. Like, I got the initial go of it, and it was a thrill ride for me. Because I thought it was going to end at one point, and then it kept going on. I was like, yes. And then I thought it was going to end again. I was like, okay, if it ends here, that's okay. It was a pretty good movie. And then it kept going. I was like, yes. And then it just kept going deeper and deeper into the meta aspects and the layers of the film that I felt it was rewarding watching it a second time. The Matrix, the first time you walked out of the theater watching The Matrix, I'm assuming you saw it back in 1999 when we were 10 years old. There's no way you got it 100%.
I guess not. I don't know. My memory is fuzzy. That I felt like I always understood it, but
There's a trilogy now for you to reference in your mind. You got to put yourself in the situation when you first saw it, how it impacted you. You know, it's one of those movies you have to see a couple times. Maybe you should watch it again. Everybody should watch it. The Frame. Shaman Winans. Check it out. If you haven't seen Ink, Ink is probably in my top 5 all time. I mean, you got The Godfather. You got Star Wars Episode 5. You got the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You got V for Vendetta.
The Hobbit.
Colton just made a joke and I laughed, for those of you not watching. But anyways, Ink is in that top 5 for me. I think Ink changed my life. It's one of the most unique and special plots that I've ever seen in a movie. The acting is the special effects are the cinematography is but the direction and the plot are just bar none. So The Frame is a better production, a better stomach. You can stomach it easier for your friends who maybe aren't really into independent films and aren't gonna be appreciative of the shittier acting or whatever else. But yeah, so both of those movies, definitely recommend them. Oh man, we've been going for over an hour.
Oh boy.
First podcast. We were supposed to do 30 minutes and we just kept going on. You spent like 30 minutes on your freaking segment about binaural audio.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyways, if you guys are interested in downloading the podcast, it'll be available on iTunes whenever it's available. Hopefully soon. Let us know what you guys think about the YouTube format. We're gonna basically a quick edit of this. We have the tutorials. The computer dying, which was recording QuickTime, so hopefully that didn't get lost. I just realized.
Yep.
And yeah, that's it. Signing off. Once again, just send us any comments on the YouTube video in the comments section or on our Twitter page at FilmIn5D. Anything you gotta say? First podcast? Knocked it out of the park?
Yeah.
Who's the star? I'm the star.
What the? Thanks for listening.